Dr. Ahmed, when we speak about the Somaliland diaspora today, who are we talking about? How has the diaspora evolved over the past 3 decades? And what strengths does that diversity bring to Somaliland's national development?
I live in Uganda, I live in Kenya, I live in Norway, Oslo, and I live in Kuwait. But I do not consider myself as a diaspora. Or even if I define myself as a diaspora, many people will not accept me into that community, the diaspora community.
Engagement, so we have to look at the different interests of the diaspora themselves, the capacity that they hold, and also remembering that we are dealing with different, for example, different generations. So it means their interests are different. So we need to, when we are thinking about the different pathways, we don't just think of one pathway, but create multiple pathways that can be able to speak to the different groups that we're dealing with when it comes to diaspora engagement. Also, one of the key things is also how does the government create a conducive environment to support these activities. For example,
we cannot hide anything. We know that many things has been used in an absolutely wrong way. So when it comes to those projects, it should be a very specific project, and it should be very transparent. And also the board of directors of any project, it should be combination between the government, in the local business, and also the diaspora. Together, they can manage really a profitable business that could also have a social impact. And one project that I was recently thinking is agriculture.
So, Yvonne, around the world, a lot of countries are creating new models for engaging their diasporas through labor, mobility, skills partnership, and knowledge exchange. I know that you have international experience, so and also with the programs that you run yourself. What do you think some of the lessons that Somaliland can adapt as it develops its own long-term diaspora strategy?
Somaliland can really focus on is also trying to see how do they make diaspora engagement easier, more inclusive, and more impactful. And as they had mentioned previously, is the diaspora community has evolved, and it means that they're not homogeneous. So therefore, when you're looking at creating different programming for diaspora engagement.
So just going into the panel, our theme this year for this first high-level panel is harnessing the potential of the Somaliland diaspora. If I may, though, I'm just going to take a little detour, if you don't mind. I'd like to frame today's conversation from a slightly different perspective. And rather than asking how Somaliland can harness its diaspora, I invite us to explore how Somaliland and its global community can build an enduring partnership, one founded on shared responsibility and shared opportunity. Before we look ahead, it's worth reflecting on the remarkable journey that has brought us here. The story of the Somaliland diaspora is not a recent one. It goes back more than a century, when Somalilanders traveled abroad in search of opportunity, not to leave their homeland behind, but to create better futures, specifically for their families. But they still remain deeply connected, and the culture never left them. Some established businesses across the Gulf, while others worked as seafarers, dock workers, and laborers in the United Kingdom. This is our history. Wherever they went, they carried Somaliland with them, like a badge of honor. Throughout our history, that connection has never been broken. We remain the same no matter where we go. During the struggle for Somaliland's liberation, the diaspora played an important role through advocacy, financial support, and international engagement. After we reasserted our independence, when our people were rebuilding from the ground up, the diaspora once again became a lifeline, supporting families, rebuilding homes and businesses, investing and helping restore hope during one of our most difficult times. Like many in this room, I also grew up in the diaspora. And one lesson was always ingrained in us by our parents. No matter where we lived, Somaliland remained home. It was our home. It contributed, and our job was to contribute to its success, its prosperity, and it was our responsibility to bring it back home. The Somaliland diaspora is more diverse than ever. Alongside those who have faithfully supported families through remittance are entrepreneurs, investors, academics, innovators, healthcare professionals, technology leaders, creatives, and a new generation of young Somalilanders who want to contribute in new and different ways that are not the traditional path of remittance only. And we have seen that clearly now. These young people are first generation or second generation born in the diaspora, and their take on how they contribute doesn't necessarily follow the path of their forefathers. Therefore, the opportunity before us is much bigger than a financial contribution alone. It's about innovation, knowledge exchange, skills transfer, entrepreneurship, policy dialogue, and global partnerships. So when we talk about today's theme of harnessing the potential of diaspora, I'd rather go with another important question. How do we move from a relationship defined by obligation to one defined by strategic partnership? Allow me to introduce the panel for today. We have Ms. Sulekha Hassan, Diaspora Youth Representative and founder of the Center for Civic Innovation and Sustainability. Mr. Mohammed Abdullahi Hassan, founder and CEO of Fusion Remit. Dr. Ahmed Musa, Director General of the Presidential Delivery Unit. And Ms. Yvonne Chilimo, Labor Mobility and Social Inclusiveness Specialist at IOM. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. So my first question is going to be to Dr. Ahmed. Dr. Ahmed, when we speak about the Somaliland diaspora today, who are we talking about? How has the diaspora evolved over the past 3 decades? And what strengths does that diversity bring to Somaliland's national development?
Thanks, Fatima. Good morning, everyone. I think regarding your question of who are the diaspora we are talking about, I think I'm a living example of that question. I lived, for the past 15 years, I lived in 4 different countries. I lived in Uganda, I lived in Kenya, I lived in Norway, Oslo, and I live in Kuwait. But I do not consider myself as a diaspora. Or even if I define myself as a diaspora, many people will not accept me into that community, the diaspora community. So basically, academics have been debating about the definition of a diaspora. I mean, for those of you who understand, I mean, the origin of the word is from the Israeli diaspora. And then later on, it has been, I mean, other migrant communities have also been described as a diaspora communities. But I am not going to go into detail about that, the definition of the concept, because we don't have academics here, and many people will not enjoy the definition of the concept. But basically, Somaliland diaspora are very old. We're talking about 200 years, from 1800 until recently. We are talking about different generations. But most recently, we're talking about the first generation, the diaspora who went to outside the country after 1990, basically 1988. We call them the first generation. We are talking about the second generation, the offspring of the first generation, and we are talking about the third generation, now the offspring of the second generation. These 3 generations have different characteristics. They play different roles, or they are expected to play different roles. Mainly, it was the first generation who substantially contributed to Somaliland state building, to Somaliland economy, and to Somaliland survival. There's a big question on the second and the third generation. Will they sustain the role and the effort of the second generation? I have an answer to that. And my answer is related to your question about redefining the role of the diaspora. Basically, from 1988 until recently, the expectation from the diaspora was to help, and I underline the word, to help the home country. But I don't think we can no longer expect that obligation of helping others, those who need to be helped in the home country from the second and the third generation. We need to redefine them and say, how can we create Somaliland, a country that can attract competent second and third generation to contribute to the development of the country. So maybe later on I will just try to explain, but basically that's what we're talking about. But also, we are talking about in different countries. We're talking about Western diaspora, we are talking about the Gulf diaspora, we are talking about the African diaspora. In the academics, we call them the near diaspora. The near diaspora. Basically, those in Europe, in Ethiopia, in Djibouti, and other places, we call them the near diaspora. Oftentimes, African diaspora are not regarded or are not considered as a true diaspora. Gulf diaspora are not considered as a true diaspora. It's mainly Western diaspora who have European Western passports who are understood as the true diaspora. Why is that the case? I don't know. Maybe we can, my fellow panelists can answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Just to follow up on something that you said, because I spoke about how growing up, it was an obligation. As young as I can remember, we were told that our obligation was to contribute monthly to back home. It was a responsibility, it was an obligation, it was something we had to do. And now you mentioned something really important. The generations that follow our generations don't see it that way. And they don't necessarily see sending money back home as an obligation, whereas when we were younger, we considered it an obligation. It was something that was ingrained in us because it was, give me your paycheck. Even if you worked part-time, it was, give me $100. I'm going to send it back home. You need to go to Dahab Shield. Send the money. It was an obligation. And I have Gen Z kids, and I know from experience right now, they don't believe that they have an obligation once they go back to Canada to send money back home. Their theory is, yeah, I'll come out and do some work in the summer, but I'm not going to be sending money every month. So that's why it's critical for us to move the conversation from remittance and talk about how we can partner with the diaspora to really have sustainable development for the country. And also, another key thing that we need to review and look at is the knowledge transfer, is the skills transfer. How do we use use the potential of the diaspora, not necessarily harness it, but how do we do an exchange where they're learning from each other, and there's cultural exchanges that happen. So I want to ask you one thing. Since you're in the government, what is the government doing to engage the diaspora and also the younger generation who fall into that category of not believing in obligations?
And thanks again. And I'll be very short so that I can also do justice for my fellow panelists. Basically, I fully agree with you. I mean, when the diaspora are helping the home country, it always starts with an obligation of being obliged to help family members, extended family members. But whenever we talk about an obligation, we should also talk about reciprocity. People are not obliged for the sake of being obliged. When I'm obliged, I'm expecting something back, right?
Yes.
Whether anything. The reason why the old generation were obliged to help the home country, because those in the home country, they also reciprocated. They reciprocated maybe through protection, protecting assets back home, protecting plots of land, protecting the business, maybe sometimes even providing some help, especially during maybe helping extended family members of the diaspora people during crisis. But the second generation are not obliged, number one. Number two, they are not expecting any reciprocity from those in the home country, because they're very much embedded in the safety nets of the host countries. Basically, insurance, banking, investment, everything. So protection, security, everything. So they're not expecting anything back. Now, I think it's the right time that the government of Somaliland answers a very big question. How can we still make the second, third generation of the diaspora connected to the home country? And as I said earlier, the question should shift, and as you rightly said, the question should shift from asking the diaspora to help Somaliland, to help their extended family members, to remit money. The question should shift. How can we ensure that the future second, third generation is contribute to the development of their country? And for that to happen, now it's time that the government of Somaliland has a serious discussion and serious policy decisions, that they create an enabling environment for the diaspora so that they can bring back with innovations, they can bring the investment, and they can contribute to the international investment. So I strongly believe Somaliland needs to create an enabling environment. Currently, I admit that Somaliland environment is not largely enabling, especially bureaucracies, monopolies, clan connections, and everything. So basically, we need to create an enabling environment, friendly regulations, predictable institutions. Currently, our institutions are not predictable. It depends on your personal connections for the diaspora so that they can be able to invest. A very good example is the Israeli diaspora. Israeli managed to create an enabling environment, predictable environment for the diaspora, and all Israeli diaspora are very much connected to the home country. That's exactly what we need to do here in Somaliland, and that's the competition we need to have here.
I would like to say, as someone who was born and raised in the United States, I've been coming to Somaliland since I was 15 years old. And so for me, having that relationship and getting to know like my grandfather, my grandmother, my great aunt really helped support like my identity and curating that for me and what it means to actually be a Somalilander, what it actually means to be someone who's going to be invested in the future. Not only in terms of like what my own like labor output, my own financial output is, but also the well-being of my neighbors, people from the city where my family's from, both in Hargeisa and in Mirbera, and also what it means for people that live in the United States or live in the diaspora in particular to think about how we can make our people more water secure, food secure, in terms of like helping and aiding with the structural capacity and the state building of the government. And so there's a lot of pathways and there's a lot of I would say hunger, and there's a lot of drive that people from the diaspora have, whether you're first gen or whether you're second gen right now. There is this longing for like to belong. There's this longing to actually go back home and spend more time than just like a month, 2 months, 3 months. And so there's like this real desire to also engage with people who are older, if there's like a generational gap in terms of like what our actual contribution can be, more than just, as you guys have already touched, in terms of like sending money back home. It is an obligation, but we also have to remember that the majority of our population is poor. We're not cash, we're not liquid. You know, we have an abundance of resources, alhamdulillah, but we're not a liquid population. And so the majority of our population really suffers from lack of accessibility, even our basic needs. So that money that is sent back home from our parents or those of us that are young and that, alhamdulillah, do have like who are established or have like a decent salary or income, we understand that when we do send money back home, it's because we're meeting the basic needs of our family members and extended people, or if it's what we donated to wellness projects for people back in the country. And so I think there needs to be this closure of this gap of realizing that there isn't this break in understanding and that young people do not want to invest in Somaliland. Young people do not want to send money back to Somaliland. Young people are much more comfortable with the luxuries and the leisurely life of living abroad, because we also see our parents wanting to come back to Somaliland, invest, build houses. Like when they say like, oh, well, the money's also coming from you too, you know? So you have to know. And also, I think there's this aspect of really ingraining into young people, just as my parents did, alhamdulillah, that this is your inheritance. Like people died for this, you know? Like our parents didn't become refugees or were forced into exile because they didn't want to stay in Somaliland or because they were like 100 years ago the descendants of like seamen. That's a very small population. The majority of Somalilanders that live abroad were forced to because of the genocide. And so it's important to remember, someone else had like touched on I think it was the person that had came from the IOM about the people that live in the diaspora, and it wasn't a voluntary migration. You know, it was forced. And so I think it's really important to remember that. And when diaspora people come back to Somaliland, we also have to remember that we're amongst people who directly living here in Somaliland who never left are actual survivors of genocide. And so that's something that we have to ingrain in our children, in our family members. We have to constantly remember, and we also have to be able to put our, not only our money, but also in terms of our intellectual labor, our sweat equity into that. And so you have to instill that into your kids. I don't have any children, but inshallah, when I do, that's something that I also will mirror to them the same way that my parents mirrored to me. And so that's something that I really hope that people, especially from an older generation, whether you're like earlier millennials or Gen Xers, really understand that your kids, it's not that they don't care about Somaliland, is that really ingrained in them? Do they, when they come here, do they just stay and get pizza and ice cream, or do they go to like Miga? Do they go to like the orphanages? Do they actually volunteer their time? Do they actually seek ways to engage with the everyday people, not just people like Hotelaha Amiro, but like everyday people who work and labor in whoever the lower class, because they're the people who sustain Somaliland. So I think that's very important, and so I'll end it there.
I love that you said that, Suleha, because I truly believe that in order to engage as a diaspora, you need to be able to go into local, like really go into the local world. I think a lot of times when we bring our diaspora kids, I live here, I've been here for 11 years almost, my kids grew up here, so it's a little different for me, but with my family, when they bring their kids here, they spend most of their times in hotels. And they're eating pizza, and they're not even getting to see the local tourism sites, or they don't take the opportunity to meet with elders. And a big thing that happens when our kids who come from the diaspora for the summer sit down with the elders and go into the local world, they will get an understanding of what it means to be Somalilander. And another thing that I really like that you talked about, Suleha, was I was a generation, we were forced to leave. It wasn't a choice. We did not migrate. We were refugees. We ended up in countries that we did not know, in a world that we did not understand, and that took a lot of adapting. But I feel like the generation that, your generation that were born there, I feel like you guys have kind of a good grasp of both worlds. You understand why your parents had to leave. And not only do you sympathize, you also empathize with it, and you weren't physically there, but you understand that it's not an obligation, it's something to keep me and my heritage. And for the next generations, and to be able to hand it over. How do you think, because I know that like more than ever, there's a whole generation of firstborn diasporas that are in fields that Somaliland and our country can utilize. You talked about water. Water scarcity is the biggest issue we have here in Somaliland. We've had back-to-back droughts. And the reality is we need those expertise. How do we engage the youth or the young professionals that have those expertise? What are some of your suggestions?
Thank you. I have several suggestions, and I kind of wrote them down. Well, the first being that there definitely needs to be, I know that was kind of like towards the tail end of the questions, but there definitely needs to be a national talent recruitment program specifically that matches people in accordance with what their interest is, their technical backgrounds, their educational backgrounds, their work histories, and then also within the different ministries. I've been through several, like whether it's like my bachelor's or my master's, I've gone through I've kind of like went to different ministries just trying to see like what their capacity is through like multiple governments, just trying to see what's going on, how do they operate, where people can be best suited. And there's always like a gap in service and understanding and expectations. But one thing I definitely will say is that there is a plethora of opportunities here. There's many ways for people to engage, and that starts with actually talent acquisition and creating this program specifically. And thankfully, like we have a diaspora department within the MFAA through the MFA through the DG, and they're very active. They're very committed to actually. They created this digital diaspora portal, and so it's important for people to register through that, and I'm hoping, inshallah, that can actually expand to also include this like talent acquisition program as well. And then there's also the other aspect, like for example, when it comes to water scarcity or food scarcity, there's aspects in terms of like enterprise that people can actually engage with that's available to the diaspora. It's just a matter of like how invested you're willing to be, how much your contribution, your sweat equity, and also your level of curiosity, because that's really necessary. If you're not a curious person, if you're not interested in actually getting into the nitty-gritty, investing your time, being out there in the hot sun, being patient, it's like a virtue you have to practice every day here. I know we do culturally and religiously, but it's really something that's going to build your mental fortitude, and it's something you have to practice every day. But there's many avenues in which the diaspora can actually engage, and so that's one of the first ways I would definitely say. There's also this other aspect regarding investment-based projects. So that can be like either in like water, boreholes, it can be in piping, it can be in sewage. There's also in terms of like road and infrastructure that people in the diaspora can actually buy into with the support of the government, and that money can actually go directly into building and sustaining infrastructural projects. And that's something I feel like will close the gap, especially with, you know, we've had like successive, I think about like 5 to 7 years of failed rains. And so there's an enormous amount of people that are coming in from the countryside. They're living in small towns, and those towns are becoming highly urbanized, but there's no services for them. And then a lot of people end up pouring into major cities, such as the capital of Hargeisa, which is also 70% water insecure. So there's a lot of challenges, but every single thing you can think about, there's literally a solution for it. And I don't say that like lightly or like naively. I literally see it every day. It's a matter of connecting people and galvanizing the diaspora specifically. And I believe it starts with the diaspora office, as well as, and this is my last point, as well as the diaspora mission offices abroad. I feel like there's a lot more they can do, and specifically to leverage the people over there, i.e. they can start with actually creating like a registry for the population there to know how many of our people are abroad. They can also digitize the national ID process as well for people. And then, of course, there's many people who would like to contribute to the actually solving the e-visa crisis. I know there's a lot of people that were not able to come to the country this year because of that reason. And it's a very simple fix. And so, inshallah, I hope that we can actually get to that so we can have more of our people come here without having to be in fear of their data or their personal information being taken by people in Somalia that are also aligned with terrorists. So that's a big concern.
We were leading into how we can move away from remittance and go into another path that's going to engage the younger generation as well. Mohammed, for decades, remittance has sustained a lot of people. As Sulekha said, we've all said it at some point in the panel. Today we're seeing a shift, though. We're seeing a very big shift toward investment and entrepreneurship and innovation. What are some of the practical steps that are needed to encourage the diaspora members to invest? Not only their financial capital, but also their expertise. What do you think? And also their networks.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا نبينا محمد. الله والله يرسف قرينا يرالسك هذا. If I try to answer that question, there is a two-way. One, a recently written article about whether a remittance takes part of the development or not. And when you read the literature, most of the people say, yes, remittance can take care or help to develop the country. But when you go deep into and critically evaluate that, you will see that remittance per se is not enough. Especially, the host country has to have so many things in order before they utilize the remittance. So you need to have institutions and frameworks that specifically target the diaspora, and also you have to have specific projects that target the diaspora For instance, recently, maybe Somaliland has also started the Somaliland Development Fund,
Yes.
the Somaliland Diaspora Fund, and that's really good. The central bank is now working with also something like that. So unless we have those in place, we cannot utilize or get the full benefit of the remittance. And another thing that I will share with you is a story of my young nephew. I recently invited him in an event in Stockholm where we raised one of those projects that has been done here in Hargeisa. And he has never been in the country. I forced him to be there. And I told him, please just come and see and listen. He listened it and he liked the idea. And he invested in $1,000. And at the same time also he persuaded two of his Swedish friends to invest in the same project. And when we talk about the younger generation, the emotional is not anymore working.
Yeah.
We cannot really force them to be obligated to send remittance, but we can have some business or projects that target this younger generation, because what they're looking for is not about sending money through emotional connection or obligation, but invest in the country. Still they have that connection with their country, but they need another mindset. And I think most of the thing that we need has to happen here in the first. And another one thing that I would add is, Somaliland is one of the most expensive travel. Yeah, so recently,
yeah.
for the last 5 years, every Somalilander has to pay in between $1,700 to $2,000 just to come to the country. And that's really disencouraging the diaspora to come. So the government has to come up some mechanism to fight for that. One way to fight for that should be just having maybe summer charter. There's many countries that does that kind of arrangement. So we have to really think about not what diaspora can contribute. Diaspora has already shown and demonstrate what they can do, but it is time for the government to utilize that and have all the mechanisms that are needed. Thank you very much.
So I think you made a great point there, and I agree. How do we move to remittance for development, or remittance for investment, or remittance for innovation? What type of programs would you say, Mohammed? And how do we get the confidence? How do we build the confidence in the diaspora to say, hey, can you come and invest $1,000 in this program so that we can build a data center, for example, right? And what are some of the suggestions that you think would work?
Thank you. I just want to add only one project which I recently thought about, and I think when we are talking about remittance, it's not anymore going to be as it used to be, because as having a company that sends remittance, we see also the diminishing impact of the remittance. But what we can do is any project that diaspora could engage has three components. One, it has to be there should be some social element. And the second also, there should be some profit. And the third and the most important, it should be transparent. Yeah. Because we cannot hide anything. We know that many things has been used in an absolutely wrong way. So when it comes to those projects, it should be a very specific project, and it should be very transparent. And also the board of directors of any project, it should be combination between the government, in the local business, and also the diaspora. Together, they can manage really a profitable business that could also have a social impact. And one project that I was recently thinking is agriculture.
So, Yvonne, around the world, a lot of countries are creating new models for engaging their diasporas through labor, mobility, skills partnership, and knowledge exchange. I know that you have international experience, and also with the programs that you run yourself. What do you think some of the lessons that Somaliland can adapt as it develops its own long-term diaspora strategy?
Somaliland can really focus on is also trying to see how do they make diaspora engagement easier, more inclusive, and more impactful. And as they had mentioned previously, is the diaspora community has evolved, and it means that they're not homogeneous. So therefore, when you're looking at creating different programming for diaspora engagement, we have to look at the different interests of the diaspora themselves, the capacity that they hold, and also remembering that we are dealing with different, for example, different generations. So it means their interests are different. So we need to, when we are thinking about the different pathways, you don't just think of one pathway, but create multiple pathways that can be able to speak to the different groups that we're dealing with when it comes to diaspora engagement. Also, one of the key things is also how does the government create a conducive environment to support these activities. For example, how are we strengthening coordination within, for example, the development partners, the government, the diaspora community, and also the private sector. Also, clear information. I think one of the key things is most of the diaspora community are not getting the information. Because, for example, you can have so many needs within Somaliland in terms of investments, skills transfer opportunities, but it's not getting to the right audience. So how do we communicate clearly of the initiatives that the government is running and also other private sectors are doing? And also, does the private sector and the government themselves speak to each other so that they can be able to create these different packages for the diaspora engagement? And also, when we talk about the multiple pathways, we are focusing on the diaspora, human capital, financial capital, and their social capital. So it is not one pathway that is being created, but creating a couple of pathways. Also, one of the key areas is how do we build the diaspora trust? And that we mainly focus within the government itself is how do we create very strong institutions that are able to deliver their mandate and show, like if I'm able to invest as a diaspora, I'm able to get my money back. We have to have clear policies that support diaspora engagement initiatives. And at the same time also, we have to create meaningful partnerships between the diaspora. And I think one of the key things, as we've mentioned, is we've really relied on diaspora for remittances. And also we are just, for them, they see themselves as just supporters of development, but how do we move them beyond supporters to partners? So that's one of the key areas that we need to look at. And also, a part of not creating single or series of initiatives, we need to create a sustainable development on diaspora so that it's a clear pathway. Not that, for example, when we have a humanitarian crisis, we are creating an initiative on a humanitarian crisis. When we want investment, we just create an activity that is being done, but now embedding it into the development goals of the country of itself. And also when you're looking at, we should not really focus, for example, how much remittances are being sent to Somaliland, or looking at how the amount of investments that had been able to be created or delivered by the diaspora. We need to look at the number of opportunities, how many young people have been able to access job opportunities through these initiatives. So those are the key areas that we really need to focus on. And I think of importance at the end of it is bringing all the stakeholders together so that they can be able to play the different roles.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to conclude, but before I do, I have one final question for each of you. In 1 minute or less, what is the single most important action Somaliland should take over the next 5 years to build an even stronger partnership with its diaspora? I'll take it back to you, Yvonne.
I think now what we need to do is not to keep on asking about how much the diaspora are giving into the country, but also how do we create systems and strategies that support diaspora engagement for it to be a long-term activity. Because if we don't have systems, we don't have the right strategies, it means the diaspora community is not going to be able to contribute in a sustainable manner. So I think for me, it's partnership, the systems, and just having a proper strategy between the diaspora, the development partners, the government, and also the private sector.
Thanks. So basically, there is a World Bank report on how easy is to do business in Somaliland. So basically, according to the World Bank report, it's not that easy to do and start a business in Somaliland. But also starting a business in Somaliland requires some connections, right? And we have already seen from the fellow panelists that the young second, third diaspora generation are losing the connections with the old generation, with the locals. Now we need to institutionalize a system that can allow the diaspora to do business in Somaliland, to bring their innovations, to contribute to development without requiring to have an elder or the Dakamet, or without requiring to have, to follow clan connections, right? So for Somaliland, I think we all agreed that things are shifting. Emotions are no longer working. Connections are getting loose. So for Somaliland now, I think Somaliland government needs to institutionalize channels and platforms so that the diaspora can easily be able to contribute and be part of the national development. How can that happen? I think that should be a discussion for the policymakers. But maybe I can easily talk about we need to improve our governance. Somaliland needs to improve the good governance, make our institutions predictable, improve regulations, enforce regulations. I would say fight monopolies. Fight monopolies, because basically monopolies, now in Somaliland, one big economic problem we have is that the little resources we have are now being accumulated by few individuals, and that's not sustainable. So we need to fight monopolies and leave the true spirit of Somaliland being a liberal economy. Currently, we say Somaliland is a liberal economy, but truly speaking, it's not. It's a country of few monopolies. So I think now also the policy discussions should shift. If you have agreed that things are shifting, but also we need the policy discussions to shift. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say the biggest point of contribution that the diaspora can have in moving things forward, particularly for the next 5 years, specifically would be actually putting our weight, our collective weight, behind actually regaining our own legal personality, because the biggest hurdle that, honestly, one of the biggest reasons why we had to also rely on remittance outside of the fact of rebuilding for the last 35 years is because every single pressure point that we all feel, either in the diaspora or living here in Somaliland, has to do with the fact that we're not formally re-recognized internationally. So we're completely isolated. I mean, we've had like a de facto embargo on us for 35 years because of that. So, and also, although there are countries that are not recognized or partially recognized, that they don't suffer from not having a SWIFT code. Somaliland does not have a SWIFT code. So our bank system is really non-functional, and that is a massive, massive hurdle. Also in relation to compliance, regulations, much as like the doctor has touched base on. But the one singular thing that's actually gonna effectively and tangibly change all of our lives, whether we're in the diaspora or here, is actually securing or resecuring our legal personality, because then we can step away much more pragmatically, much more systematically away from having to rely on remittances onto actual like investments, bilateral agreements, direct investments actually. So that's something that I would like honestly just put the pressure on and really help support the president as he's moving in this direction to secure our legal personality and actually take the legal case forward, because that's the one thing, again, I will underscore it, the one thing that's gonna actually alleviate every single pressure point that we all feel, whether it's health, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's job creation, whether it's like investments, whether it's like startups, whether it has to do with water security, food security, every single thing it touches based on it. So that's what I just wanted to emphasize. And thank you so much for having me on this panel and also coming too, so thank you.
Thank you. Although I agree all of you, I just want to add only 2 points. One is that from now to next year, we have to have come up with 2 specific projects that focuses on the diaspora and that the diaspora can invest, and this should be treated like non-corruptible, highly transparent 2 projects, and those 2 projects could be the flagship, and we can build on that. The second thing that I will add also, and we reiterate again, is that we have to make affordable to come the country. Before we ask the diaspora to come here, we have to make coming here affordable, and the government can take really this role in that direction also. Thank you very much, and I appreciate for the ministry for having the second year and arranging this amazing.
I want to take a moment and thank our distinguished panelists for sharing your thoughts, your insights. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I just want to leave you with one message. I'll be really quick. I hope you take away from this conversation something really important. The Somaliland Diaspora is not simply a community living abroad. It's an extension of our nation, our people, our heritage. It's not about remittance or just sending money back home. It's about bringing knowledge, bringing experience, innovation, investment, and they're global connections. We just don't want to look at them as just a community somewhere. The future of Somaliland will be shaped by the strength of the partnerships we build between those at home and Somalilanders across the world. As we continue to celebrate Diaspora Week, may today's discussion inspire us to move beyond appreciation and towards action, creating the policies, partnerships, and opportunities that allow us to succeed as a nation and as a people. I want to thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Diaspora Week.
Thank you, guys.
First and foremost, it's a pleasure and an honor to welcome you all today to the Diaspora Week 2026. I am honored to be here. My name is Fatima Ahmed Umar. I will be your moderator today for this panel. Some people we know, some people we don't, but we'll do a brief introduction before we start the panel. So just going into the panel, our theme this year for this first high-level panel is harnessing the potential of the Somaliland diaspora. If I may, though, I'm just going to take a little detour, if you don't mind. I'd like to frame today's conversation from a slightly different perspective. And rather than asking how Somaliland can harness its diaspora, I invite us to explore how Somaliland and its global community can build an enduring partnership, one founded on shared responsibility and shared opportunity. Before we look ahead, it's worth reflecting on the remarkable journey that has brought us here. The story of the Somaliland diaspora is not a recent one. It goes back more than a century, when Somalilanders traveled abroad in search of opportunity, not to leave their homeland behind, but to create better futures, specifically for their families. But they still remain deeply connected, and the culture never left them. Some established businesses across the Gulf, while others worked as seafarers, dock workers, and laborers in the United Kingdom. This is our history. Wherever they went, they carried Somaliland with them, like a badge of honor. Throughout our history, that connection has never been broken. We remain the same no matter where we go. During the struggle for Somaliland's liberation, the diaspora played an important role through advocacy, financial support, and international engagement. After we reasserted our independence, when our people were rebuilding from the ground up, the diaspora once again became a lifeline, supporting families, rebuilding homes and businesses, investing and helping restore hope during one of our most difficult times. Like many in this room, I also grew up in the diaspora. And one lesson was always ingrained in us by our parents. No matter where we lived, Somaliland remained home. It was our home. It contributed, and our job was to contribute to its success, its prosperity, and it was our responsibility to bring it back home. The Somaliland diaspora is more diverse than ever. Alongside those who have faithfully supported families through remittance are entrepreneurs, investors, academics, innovators, healthcare professionals, technology leaders, creatives, and a new generation of young Somalilanders who want to contribute in new and different ways that are not the traditional path of remittance only. And we have seen that clearly now. These young people are first generation or second generation born in the diaspora. And their take on how they contribute doesn't necessarily follow the path of their forefathers.